Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Russian Doll Season 2. In this video, I will review Season 2 of the Netflix show Russian Doll. Now, the first part of this video will be spoiler-free. As I give my thoughts, it will probably help if you've seen Season 1 of Russian Doll, but if you haven't seen Season 2, I will not spoil anything for you in this first section, but then later I will give some of my spoiler thoughts for those who have seen Season 2 of Russian Doll. So first off, the first thing I had to say, I just recorded this video and I thought I did a really good job and I said everything that I wanted to say, and then I went back and listened to the audio and I forgot to make sure that my mic was connected, so the audio was horrendous and completely unusable. So I'm having to do this again, and hopefully I know it's never going to be as good as the first time, but hopefully I can give some of the same thoughts of how I had in about what I think about Russian Doll Season 2. Maybe I consider the first recording a rehearsal. Anyway, so Russian Doll Season 1 is one of my favorite seasons of television of all time. And in fact, recently I did a time loop video where I ranked all the time loop movies, TV shows, and episodes. And this was my number 2 on the list, even though one of the guests that I had from the other channel, Darren from D's Reviews, he completely disagreed and didn't like this season. Many people in the chat agreed with me, though, that I thought this was the second best time loop story, and I absolutely loved Season 1. I loved it for the characters were really interesting, really quirky. I love how they're just crazy, quirky characters that are just really out there in your face, very eccentric, and when that's done right, I really enjoy it. And then when it's done wrong, it can come off as annoying, which, to be honest, that happens a little bit in Season 2. But when it's done right, like it was in Season 1 of Russian Doll, I absolutely love it. And plus, it took these quirky, eccentric characters and explored their character stories in really amazing, really fleshed out, really dynamic, really interesting ways, and it was one of the more interesting uses of time loop because they did it to explore the characters in very fascinating ways. So I absolutely love Season 1 of Russian Doll. However, I had heard the opinion from a lot of people that they felt like Russian Doll Season 1 was a complete story and that there should not be a Season 2 because the story has been told and you don't really need any more than that. And honestly, I've always very strongly disagreed with that. I was excited. I wanted there to be a Season 2 of Russian Doll, and so I was very excited when it was announced there would be a Season 2 of Russian Doll. Although, because for me, the ending of Season 1 was a bit ambiguous, and although you could say, yes, the complete story of the time loop was told in Season 1, I feel like it's just these characters are so interesting. I feel like there's more that could be done with them, and I just wanted to see more of these characters. I wanted to see more of them explored. So when I saw the trailer for Season 2, and they showed that Season 2 would not be about a time loop, but about time travel, about various characters traveling into the past, I was fascinated, especially the way that the trailers portrayed it, because it portrayed it as though this would be very eccentric and keeping that same tone of Season 1, that crazy out there tone, but doing it in a different way and exploring these characters even more. So I was really excited for Season 2, and I thought it was going to be great. But when I watched it, I found that those who said that the show should have ended at Season 1 would probably feel vindicated, because this did feel unnecessary, tacked on, and frankly it wasn't as good. Now, that's not to say that the season overall was bad, because it wasn't. I still had things that I really enjoyed about the season. I still liked seeing these characters again, but it failed in many ways to live up to what it accomplished in Season 1. For the most part, as I said, at times this eccentric quirkiness of the characters did not come off as well, and was actually coming off as a little bit annoying at times. And frankly, the biggest fault of this season was it was boring for a lot of it. Not all of it. Some of it was interesting, particularly the beginning and the end of the season, but in the middle, it certainly dragged. And there was like a couple episodes I would flat out say I was bored the entire time with it, that it didn't really work for me at all. And it didn't utilize the characters in the way that season one did them to tie it into the weird sci-fi occurrences. And there was, in fact, a side story involving a supporting character, which I completely was never interested in. The entire storyline I thought was a waste of time and boring, and I had zero interest in it. But again, some things I did like. I thought it ended on a very powerful note. I thought that it did do some more interesting character exploration, but just not as good as it did in season one. So overall, I thought it was a decent season, but not quite as good as it could have been, and not quite as good as it should have been, particularly judging on season one. So my rating for season 2 of Russian Doll out of 10 is a 6. Good. As I said, it wasn't terrible. It was decent. It was entertaining, and I just liked seeing these characters again. And I did think it had a strong ending, but it just dragged too much in the middle, and it especially did not live up to the tying in these great, fun, quirky characters with the sci-fi premise. It did not do nearly as good of a job as season 1 did. Now here's the thing, though, because I'm sure, especially those who thought that the show should have ended at season 1 will probably say the show should end now and they shouldn't do a season 3. Personally, I want there to be a season 3. Not if there's going to be more of this, but I feel like, especially judging off of season 1 and judging how there were some good aspects of season 2, I think the writers can do better. I think if they try again, they look at season 2 as a learning experience, and they take the feedback of those who didn't like season 2, and they're like, okay, what we did wrong here, what can we do better? I think they could actually do a better job of this if they gave it another chance. So I'd be willing to give them another chance. In fact, I want them to try again, but only if they feel like their hearts are in it. Only if they have a strong idea and concept and know that they can do better. If they just do it for the money and just do it out of complacency or obligation, then yes, don't bother. But season 1 was so good, and there were some good aspects of season 2 that I'd be willing to give them another shot. So that's my feelings on that. So now I'm going to get into my spoiler review for this season. If you have not seen Russian Doll Season 2, you might want to cut out now, because I will be getting into some spoilers starting right now. So, in particular, just to elaborate more on what I was saying in my spoiler-free section, is when Nadia traveled to Europe, those are the episodes I felt were completely boring, and it felt like a total tonal shift from the show. Like it was getting more into a more like serious Holocaust type drama, which I love serious Holocaust type dramas, but that's not what the show does well. And it was completely out of left field, and it wasn't good tonal shift. And plus, like, you kind of knew that she wasn't going to change the past, and she was going into the paces. And when she learns that what she did to try to change the past is just leading to the exact same future, I saw that coming, and it was predictable and boring, and I didn't think it did anything for her, character that much. Especially not to justify these long, boring sequences. And it's funny because I talked about this season in the review I did for Undone Season 2, which has always been a similar show to Russian Doll. And Season 2 just so happened to come out at the same time as Season 2 of this show. And they also had a sequence where they went to Europe and traveled in the past. But it was fascinating. It was interesting. Like Season 2 of Undone overall did a much better job of maintaining the quality and the power of season one than Russian Doll did, which is a disappointment. Now, when I mentioned there was a side plot that I completely had zero interest in, I thought it was completely boring. I'm talking about Alan's side plot, where he travels into his grandmother or whatever in East Berlin. Like, it seemed like a complete another waste of time, and I had zero interest in that. Now, the other thing I have to say is from the trailers, I thought that they were implying that Nadia's friends Maxine and Lizzie were going to time travel with her, and they were going to include her in the time travel. I was like, what a great idea! Because these characters have been more interesting, but they were more just in the background on the side in season one. So wouldn't it be amazing to actually bring them in on it, and they see the weird sci-fi stuff happening as well? But that's not what they did. They didn't do that, and I was actually really disappointed by that. Instead, Maxine just went to Europe with Nadia for a bit, but that's it. They didn't really do much, and frankly, as I said, these characters I thought were really endearing in season one came off as kind of annoying at times in season two. And there were things I did like, however. I did really love the ending, the final episode, as I said, when they traveled back to the time loop again and had Nadia bringing her baby into the future because she wanted to save herself from the awful childhood she had, but ends up like destroying time, and she's in denial about it, and Alan has to bring her out of it. Like, I love that. And as much as I hated Alan's side plot in this season, I did like how Nadia and Alan were still in touch, and that they still had this special connection after their experience of season one. I did like that. I think that was a good thing to explore, and I like how that came back into play in the finale, where Alan was the one who had to talk her out of what she was doing. And it's a very interesting, character dynamic for Nadia, because she had this awful childhood and she's trying to spare herself that, but of course, she can't bring her baby her into the future. That completely fucks the timeline. And I like how it was really fascinating how like everything was falling apart. And I do like how they did the season one callback when they're back in that same bathroom playing that same music again that was in the time loop. That all really worked for me, and I also really liked Ruth's character story, how they explored Nadia's connection to Ruth more in this season, and how it ends with Ruth's death, which was very tragic. And it was also kind of interesting how Nadia first heard about it by like traveling to the future and seeing like that train that was stuck out in time where everyone was going to Ruth's funeral. Like, that was all very powerful stuff. So that really worked for me. But again, too much in the middle. It just was too boring. It's way too stretched out. Even parts when Nadia was in the 80s in her mother's body, that stretched on for way too long. And again, it was just going through the paces of her trying to change the past, but you knew it wasn't going to change. It was kind of just a waste of time. So that's what I got to say about season 2 of Russian Dolls. It was decent. There were good parts of it, but it was nowhere near as good as it could have been. It definitely didn't live up to season 1, but I'd be willing to give the writers another shot. Because there were so much good aspects of the season, they could do better. I believe they could do better. Anyway, that is it for my review of Season 2 of Russian Doll. Hopefully I will not have to record this a third time. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please check out my channel as I cover many other shows covering Star Trek Strange New Worlds currently airing, and when Better Call Saul returns from its hiatus, so we'll cover that, as well as covering Westworld Season 4, which will be starting shortly. And also cover all things Star Trek and other shows like Star Wars Rebels, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.